My parents told me that if I don't take my 12-year-old stepsister on the trip I planned with my friends, I have to cancel everything. 3 years ago, my dad married Maria, and with the package came my now stepsister, who is currently 12 years old and named Valentina. I know a 12-year-old can be a little annoying, but Valentina is on another level. The girl is out of control. If you don't do what she wants, or if everyone doesn't do what she wants, she throws a tantrum like a 2-year-old until Maria, her mother, gives in to her demands, because that's always what ends up happening. So she already throws the tantrum knowing that, in the end, her mother will cave. The typical scenario. Basically, she wants attention all the time. If someone else is the center of attention and not her, brace yourself for chaos. Imagine that at any birthday party, even if it's not hers, she needs to receive a gift too because she can't accept that someone gets something without her also getting something. And obviously, at every birthday, she blows out the candles with the birthday person. But it's not the usual situation where the birthday child blows out the candle first and then the other kids join in. No, she has to be right there blowing the candle with the birthday person. There isn't a single birthday photo where this girl isn't glued next to the cake. And of course, she wants to be invited to absolutely every plan, every event, every outing. Even if she doesn't want to go, she wants the invitation. Her presence must be requested. This year, for my birthday, I decided to take a trip with my 3 best friends. We're going to the beach and rented an Airbnb right by the ocean. Since it was my birthday, my parents covered part of the trip as a gift to me, making it cheaper for me and my friends. We were really happy and grateful for that because it significantly lowered our travel costs. The problem started when Valentina found out we were going on a trip to celebrate my birthday. Obviously, she wanted to come. She asked me if she could go, and honestly, I laughed at the moment and said, "No, Valen, it won't be fun for you to travel with me and my friends. You'll get really bored." But guess what? The brat kept insisting, and I expected my dad or Maria to say something since they were right there listening to the conversation, but they said nothing. In the end, I thought she'd forget about it, since there was still a month left before the trip. After all, she's a kid. She could easily get distracted by something else. My friends and I continued planning everything. My parents helped with part of the costs, but they didn't pay for everything. We booked several things and used our own savings to cover expenses. It wasn't a full gift, just an assist. Then, a week before the trip, guess what? The brat remembered. And not only did she remember, but she wouldn't stop insisting. Every single day it was crying, tantrums, and non-stop begging. "Can I go? Can I go? Can I go?" At first I was patient and calmly explained why she couldn't come, but at some point I was exhausted and just said directly, "No, you can't come, that's it. Someone needs to teach you what it means to hear a no." Oh, the drama. She ran off crying to her mother, and then Maria came to tell me that I had no right to discipline her daughter. And all I could think was, well, someone has to do it, Mom, because clearly you're not. 3 days before the trip, my dad and Maria called me for a serious conversation and told me I would have to take Valentina on the trip with my friends. They said she just couldn't get over it, that she was devastated, and that they couldn't make her let it go. They asked me to take her. I told them I didn't want to be a babysitter on my birthday, that the plans we made weren't suitable for a 12-year-old. Imagine, me and my friends, all almost 30, going to the beach, going out to parties, dining out. I can't take a 12-year-old to that. And I wasn't about to change the entire trip just to babysit. I explained all this to them, but it wasn't enough, so they gave me an ultimatum. Either I take Valentina, or they won't pay for any part of the trip anymore. They said they would withdraw the financial support they had promised. At that moment, I cried out of anger. You know when you cry from sheer indignation? I couldn't believe what they were doing. I told them this wasn't fair, that my friends were also counting on that support, and that they weren't just messing with me, but with 3 other people who had financially planned their trip based on that money. Everything was already set. We were 3 days away. They couldn't just change the rules now. And you know what they did? Nothing. They stuck to their decision. Now, I have 2 options. Take the brat on the trip or drown myself in debt to cover what they won't pay anymore. Because honestly, we don't have enough money to cover that part without their help. We were counting on that support. So either I get myself into serious debt or I'm forced to take this spoiled little brat with me. So yeah, happy birthday to me. In the end, I had no choice. My friends and I talked and came to the conclusion that there wasn't enough time to get more money. Even if we tried, there were only a few days left, and we couldn't cover everything without my parents' help. So, with deep hatred and a lump in my throat, I accepted taking Valentina. She was so happy when she found out she was going that she even gave me a hug, as if it were a prize for her, a trophy won through crying and manipulation. Maria and my dad pretended nothing had happened, as if they hadn't blackmailed me and ruined my dream trip. On the day of the flight, I already knew I was going to regret it, but I had no idea how much. From the moment we arrived at the airport, Valentina started causing trouble. She didn't want to walk too much, complained that her suitcase was too heavy, that she was thirsty, that she wanted a snack, that she wanted candy, that she was tired. We checked in and went to the boarding gate, and the brat kept insisting that she wanted a toy from one of the airport stores. I told her no, that I wasn't going to spend money on that she was already going on a trip she wasn't even supposed to be on, and what happened? She threw herself on the floor. Yes, right in the middle of the airport. She started crying, screaming, stomping her feet like a 2-year-old. Everyone was staring. My friends were already losing their patience, and one of them said, "This can't be real. We're really taking this on the trip?" And I just wanted to bury my face in the floor out of sheer embarrassment. The flight was another torture. She kept insisting she wanted the window seat, but the seats were already assigned. She made a huge drama, sulked, and spent half the time poking my friend next to her, asking how much longer until we arrived, complaining about the airplane food, the noise, everything. We arrived at our destination exhausted, but I was still trying to convince myself that it might be worth it. After all, we were at the beach, in a beautiful place. But I underestimated Valentina's ability to turn any moment into a nightmare. She wanted attention all the time. If she wasn't the center of attention, she would find a way to be. At our first dinner out to celebrate my birthday, she started complaining that she was bored. She took my phone without asking, started making noise, and interrupted any conversation that wasn't about her. If we started laughing at something, she would immediately butt in asking, "What? What? Why are you laughing?" And if we didn't explain, she would sulk. The next day, we went to the beach. My friends and I just wanted to enjoy, sunbathe, relax. But the brat wouldn't let us. First, she complained that the sand was too hot, then that the water was too salty, then that she wanted ice cream. We bought one, but then she dropped hers on the ground and had a meltdown. Screamed, cried, kicked, saying she wanted another one. I refused, and she was furious, saying I was horrible. She spent the whole afternoon sulking, making angry faces, and saying she wanted to go home. At night, things got even worse. My friends and I wanted to go to a bar, but obviously, with Valentina there, that was impossible. So we had to change our plans and go to some random restaurant instead. She spent the whole time on her phone, interrupting every adult conversation with dumb questions or complaining that she was sleepy. The last straw was when we tried to book a boat tour. We were all excited. It would be an amazing experience seeing the open sea, maybe even dolphins. But guess what? Valentina started crying, saying she didn't want to go, said she would get seasick, that she was scared, that she didn't like boats. We tried to ignore her and went ahead with the plan, but she spent the entire time complaining, saying she wanted to go back to the shore, that she was tired. At one point, she threw herself on the floor of the boat because she wanted a soda, and no one had bought one. Yes, she threw a tantrum in the middle of the ocean, on a boat full of tourists. The guide was visibly uncomfortable, and my friends looked at me with a mix of pity and rage. By the end of that day, one of my friends had had enough and pulled me aside to talk. She said this wasn't what we had planned, that she was really upset, that she had expected a fun trip, not a nightmare with a spoiled kid ruining everything. And she was right. I went back to my room and cried out of anger, frustration, disgust. My birthday, my dream trip, had been ruined, and all I could feel was rage toward my parents for putting me in this situation. The trip continued to be a nightmare until the very last day. When we got back home, Valentina arrived happy and satisfied, as if she had been the queen of the trip. When my dad and Maria asked how it was, she said, "It was fun, but she was really mean and didn't let me do everything I wanted." I looked at my parents, expecting them to see the damage they had caused, but they just laughed and said, "Oh, Valentina has a strong personality, doesn't she? I have never felt so much hatred in my entire life." When I got back home, I felt an unbearable weight in my chest. It was a mix of shame, anger, and a sense of failure I had never felt before. I couldn't even look at my friends. I knew they were just as disappointed as I was, that this trip was something we had planned for so long, and that I had dragged along a brat who ruined everything. Not because I wanted to, but because my parents forced me. But in the end, that didn't matter. The trip was a disaster, and I felt like it was all my fault. For the first few days after we got back, I avoided responding in our group chat as much as possible. I saw them talking to each other, discussing work and other things, but none of them mentioned the trip. That only made me feel worse. I knew we needed to talk, but just thinking about facing that conversation made me want to disappear. At home, the situation didn't help at all. My parents kept acting like nothing had happened, and Valentina was more unbearable than ever. What did she learn from this trip? That she can do whatever she wants, push any situation until she gets her way, and that in the end, there are no consequences. For her, everything was perfect. But for me, every time I looked at her, I felt a growing hatred. I spent weeks like this, trying to ignore everything, until one day, while I was sitting on the couch scrolling through my phone, my friends showed Up. They rang the doorbell, and when I opened the door and saw all three of them standing there, my heart sank. They walked in and sat down, all with serious expressions. I knew they weren't just there to visit. Finally, one of them spoke. "We need to talk." I lowered my head, feeling my throat tighten. I didn't want to hear what they had to say because I already knew. I knew they were disappointed. I knew I had ruined the trip. I knew I had done everything wrong. "Look, we understand what happened." One of them started. "We know you were forced to take that girl. We know it wasn't your fault." I lifted my head immediately, surprised. "What do you mean? You think we didn't notice?" Another one replied. "It was obvious that you didn't want her there, that you were just as frustrated as we were." I let out a sigh of relief, but before I could say anything, the part I was expecting came. "But there's something we need to tell you." One of them continued, looking at me seriously. "You need to get out of this house." My stomach twisted instantly. "What do you mean?" "You're almost 30 years old and you're still here, stuck in this nightmare," she said bluntly. "Your parents clearly don't respect you. They blackmailed you, made you ruin your own birthday, and didn't even care about how you felt. But I have nowhere to go." I tried to argue, feeling a lump in my throat. "Then do something, anything, but don't stay here. If you do, you'll never have peace. You'll always be forced to put up with this, always be treated like a doormat. You need to take control of your life." I knew they were right, but hearing it out loud made me feel even worse. Because deep down, I knew it was true. I was living under my parents' roof, dependent on them. And because of that, I could never really stand up for myself. I would always be treated as a burden, as someone without a voice. I spent the next few days thinking about it. What could I do? How could I leave? I had never been financially independent. I needed to find a way to make money, and fast. That's when I thought of something I had always loved doing: makeup. I started experimenting with different looks on myself, posting on social media. At first, no one cared much, but I kept going, practicing every day, improving my skills. Soon, I started offering makeup services to people I knew, charging low prices just to gain experience. I slowly built up a client base, and before I knew it, I was making enough money to support myself. It wasn't a fortune, but it was a start. After months of hard work, I managed to save enough to rent a small apartment, a simple place, but my own. The day I left home was liberating. My parents were surprised when I announced I was moving out, but they didn't do anything to stop me. In fact, they almost seemed relieved. Valentina, as always, threw a fit, saying she would miss me, but deep down, I knew she didn't care. Since then, I've cut off contact. I knew I would never be heard in that house, that no matter what I did, I would always be the one expected to give in, to tolerate everything. I needed to live my life without constantly feeling suffocated. Today, I live alone, I work doing what I love, and for the first time, I truly feel free. My friends are still by my side, and I know I could never have done it without them. If they hadn't come to talk to me that day, I might still be trapped in that hell, waiting for something to change when, in reality, the only person who needed to change was me. After a while, everything started falling into place. I was finally living on my own, working as a makeup artist, and managing to pay my bills without depending on anyone. It wasn't luxurious, but at least it was my life, my rules. I no longer had to deal with Valentina or my parents' emotional blackmail. It was a freedom I had never imagined I would feel. My friends and I went back to how things were before. Little by little, we got over the disaster of that trip, though the trauma of taking Valentina still haunted us from time to time. Whenever someone mentioned the beach, we'd exchange looks and laugh, but at the same time, we felt a certain bitterness. Until one day, one of them had an idea. "I need to make up for my last birthday," she said, laughing. "And this time, I want a real trip." We all agreed instantly. It was more than time to do something just for us. No spoiled kids, no manipulative parents, a toast to independence. This time, we planned everything carefully. A new destination, a better hotel, and one clear rule: no one besides the four of us. No extra guests, no relatives, just us and the certainty that this trip would finally be what it should have been from the start. The excitement grew as the days passed, and when it was finally time to board, I felt a deep sense of fulfillment. Just the simple act of getting on that plane without a dead weight tagging along filled me with happiness. And the trip was perfect. We took amazing photos, laughed until our stomachs hurt, drank a lot, and enjoyed every second. We went out dancing without anyone interrupting us, met plenty of interesting guys, and had fun the way we deserved. It was everything we had always wanted. The feeling of being with friends, not having to worry about anyone but ourselves, and I spent days soaking up the sun, enjoying the beach, sipping drinks, and basking in our freedom. It was incredible how, without a brat ruining everything, every moment felt special. No need to negotiate plans, change schedules, or deal with tantrums. Everything just flowed naturally, and of course, we posted photos. A lot of photos. Each picture showed just how happy we were, how this trip was everything it was meant to be. Deep down, I knew this would bother some people, but honestly, not my problem. We returned feeling refreshed, renewed, and ready to take on life again. But of course, I should have known my dad and Maria wouldn't let it slide. The call came just a few days after I got home. My dad, with that serious and tired tone, started a speech that made me roll my eyes before he even finished. Valentina was really upset that you didn't take her this time. She cried a lot, was devastated, saying she wanted to go too. You knew she would want to be with you. It wouldn't have hurt to include your sister. I took a deep breath, stared into the distance, trying to gather patience, but I could already feel the anger rising. Are you serious? Of course I am, he replied. You didn't have to be so cruel. You know how she is. I let out a dry laugh. Oh, I know. Exactly how she is. And I also know that if I had taken her, this trip would have been another nightmare. He sighed, like I was the one being unreasonable. You could have thought about her. That was when I lost the last shred of patience I had left. No, Dad, enough, that's it. I spent years thinking about everyone else, letting you decide what was best for me, putting up with emotional blackmail, being forced to drag around your wife's daughter like she was my responsibility. But you know what? She's not my responsibility. She never was. Silence. So I continued. I respect you, but I'll say this once and I hope you get it. Tell Maria to go to hell and start teaching that girl how to be a decent human being. Because I am not her babysitter. I am not responsible for her emotional well-being. And I am definitely not responsible for the parenting you two failed to do. The silence on the other end of the line was the most satisfying thing I had ever heard in my life. And one more thing, Dad, I went on, completely done. This is the last time I'm hearing this nonsense. If you and Maria want to keep playing this game, fine. But I'm done. I left that house, I left that life, and I'm not coming back. I waited to see if he would say something. Nothing. So I simply hung up. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely free. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with a lump in my throat. I stare at the ceiling, thinking about everything that has happened over the past few years and wondering how I got here. I'm almost 30, and to be completely honest, there are days when I feel like a total failure. I look around and see so many people my age who have already achieved so much. Established careers, their own homes, luxurious trips, well-organized lives. And meanwhile, I'm just now starting to build my independence. I feel behind, like I wasted years of my life trapped in something I should never have accepted. I spent a good part of my life letting others decide for me. My parents set the rules, controlled my steps, and in the end, expected me to simply accept whatever situation they put me in because that's just how things are. And I did. I accepted being treated like a burden. I accepted being manipulated. I accepted being forced to swallow ridiculous things because deep down, I thought I had no choice. Or rather, I believed I had no choice. When you are financially dependent on others, you lose your voice. You can scream, you can protest, you can try to stand your ground, but at the end of the day, if the person who pays your bills doesn't want to listen, they simply won't. And that's exactly what happened to me. It didn't matter if I was unhappy, if I was being forced to carry a responsibility that wasn't mine, if they were ruining my plans and treating me like an emotional caretaker for a spoiled child. They didn't care, because in the end, I had nowhere to go. I couldn't afford a place of my own. I didn't have a stable career. I didn't have an income that allowed me to stand my ground and say no. And that's why, when I look back, I feel a mix of anger and sadness. Anger for allowing it to happen. Sadness for taking so long to realize I needed to get out. If I could go back in time and talk to my younger self, I'd say, chase your own money, girl, because no one is going to hand you anything. If you don't have financial independence, people will treat you like they're doing you a favor, like you owe them something, like you should be grateful for any crumbs they decide to throw your way. You can have the most loving parents in the world, the most amazing partner, the most loyal friends, but if you don't have your own money, there will always come a moment when someone will make you shut up, a moment when you'll have to swallow your pride and accept things that hurt you because you can't just walk away. And if you think, that will never happen to me, believe me, no one thinks it will happen to them until it does. I thought my life was under control, that my parents were fair, that everything would be fine. And one day, I woke up being emotionally blackmailed into dragging a brat along on the one thing I had actually planned for myself. I saw my friends disappointed. I saw my birthday dream go down the drain because I couldn't afford my own trip. Today, I'm not rich. I'm still building my stability, still learning how to be financially independent. But you know what the difference is? Today, no one controls me. No one forces me to do something I don't want to do. No one traps me in ridiculous situations. If something doesn't sit right with me, I get up and leave. And the freedom that comes with that is priceless. So if you still depend on someone, if you still live in the shadow of others, if you feel like your voice is never heard, start now. Even if it's selling cakes, doing nails, learning a new skill, investing in something of your own. But start, because at the end of the day, money doesn't buy happiness, but not having money keeps you stuck in situations that make you miserable. And there is nothing sadder than being a grown woman who can't make her own decisions because she has nowhere else to go. Don't be that woman. Be the woman who looks in the mirror and knows she doesn't need anyone to stand on her own.